Hey Kevin, I'll pretty much just let you kind of jump into this one because this is a new format we're trying here to do a Q&A and have things go live here so everybody can participate and join in. And everyone, you have full control of your own microphones and your own cameras, however you want to do that. We have no problem with everybody staying hidden if they wish or come on camera as you like. If you're going to come off mute, just give us a heads up and or tell us you come off mute if you have something you want to ask live as we go. Um, Kevin's prepared a few things, but for the most part, we want to make this interactive and allow
Hmm.
everybody to talk. So carry on, Kevin. It's your
All
floor
right,
is yours. Yeah.
perfect. I haven't heard that since the Army days, but thank you, Quintus, for the introduction. So good evening. I'm Kevin Sartor, running for Mayor Surprise. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. I know it's our first event, like Quintus said, but hopefully we'll gain some momentum. We put it out a little bit late, but we'll continue to do these every Monday night. So if you can, let your friends and family know, and anybody in Surprise that's interested in the mayor's race, we'll continue to do that. So we've gained an incredible amount of momentum since we started this thing. A lot of support from all over the city. So it's been an incredible journey, and I appreciate everybody that has helped so far. And hopefully tonight we'll talk to a couple other folks that want to join our cause. All right, so we'll talk about a few things tonight. The first thing being public safety. Those are a huge issue, are a huge concern for our residents, and a big priority for me as mayor. We'll talk about transparency, accountability, especially with the tax, the sales tax increase for a vote tomorrow. We'll talk about some election reminders and then just open up to Q&A. So we're looking probably about 30, 45 minutes. We'll see how it goes with the Q&A at the end. I'm going to go ahead to the next slide. All right, talked about that already. All right, so again, these are our topics, and talk about public safety, the neighborhoods, government accountability. These are all things that are important. So we'll just jump right into the public safety one if we can. There we go. All right. All right. So why is this important? We all need to feel safe where we live, work, and go to school. It shouldn't be an issue, but it's something we have to talk about, and it's a real concern. And I feel like, given my background, that I'm uniquely set up to lead the conversation. It needs to be an honest conversation, honest dialogue. And we need to have some serious and immediate actions on those things. Right? There's really no time to waste. So, public safety has been it's the biggest budget, the most employees, and it's something I have to be very deliberate and very strategic about and working with. And that's something I'll do with our police chief and our fire chief, working with our city manager as well, making sure that our city's safe, and our heroes have the training, equipment, and funding that they need to do their jobs. All right, there's a few different aspects of public safety I'm going to talk about tonight. I think the biggest one is probably going to be with our growth. We have a lot of growth coming up. We're at I just checked today. We're at 170,000 residents, just short of that today. And really, by 2030, we'll be closer to 300,000 residents, which is a ton if you think about that. I mean, it's almost doubling where we're at now. So, in order to continue to have that public safety mindset and to make sure that our city is safe, that we need to add at least 15 to 20 new firefighters and 25 to 30 new police officers each year, just to keep pace with the growth, attrition, and retirement. And so with that growth, there's going to be a huge need for training. And in the West Valley, really in the entire county, training seats are at a premium. Each department's growing, each city is growing, and they all need training seats. And that's one of the things that we really need to focus on. So for me, it's making sure that our police and fire have those training seats. And by doing that, we're going to have to build a public safety training facility. I know Chandler just built one a few years ago, and it was a pretty hefty price tag. But for me, it's about working with partnerships to help minimize the cost for our residents. But we have a couple other things going on. I think we can probably do it in a phased approach where we have our initial training place, and then continue to add things that we need to over time. But again, working regionally, I feel like there's some room to work with some of our Department of Defense partners, with Luke and the National Guard and the other reserve component. We could share that space. And I think that's going to be important to do. That way, when we need to have those 15 to 20 firefighters or those 25 to 30 police officers each year, we have the training seats. We don't have to wait for them to go to training. I know a lot of times we hire these folks and they're kind of in a holding pattern until they get that training that they need. So it's going to be an important thing to tackle. But again, we're going to do it collaboratively, working regionally, and working with some different partners. So, another thing that is important to me for public safety is making sure that our folks, have the life, health, safety issues and keeping those at a minimum. I think for me, the public, they do their best to keep our folks safe, but for me, it's making sure that we have state of the art equipment to make sure that they're safe, have a lot of mental health support. I know those folks go through a ton every single day. Make sure that they have that, and then for the firefighters, I think some of the decon stuff that they can do to prevent um, cancer, and then some of the preventative screening that we can do is going to be vitally important to make sure that those folks stay safe and they stay on the job and that they're doing what they need to do to keep us going. So I think the next thing for me, as mayor, is making sure that we're working regionally. Surprise is going to be that regional anchor, in my opinion, in the West Valley. We're strategically located between the 303 and Grand, the US 60, and we really have the most room to grow out of all the cities. I think us and Buckeye are really going to be those two places that we're going to see a lot of growth. And so for me as mayor, it's not just about protecting Surprise, but it's also looking regionally, working regionally. And there's a lot of things that our police department and fire are currently doing, and I think those are things that we continue to support. And there's a lot of crime investigation that they do. There's a West Valley Traffic Coalition that they have, and really some of the homeless initiatives that we're taking on as a city to make sure that we're going to continue to work towards those things and do the things that we need to do to make sure that we're safe and Surprise remain safe, but also working regionally with those partners. So one of the things I think that each, and I'm going to go into school safety, but one of the things that is crucially important is to make sure that we talk about school safety. And then there's a lot of different governing bodies, whether it's city, whether that's school districts, whether that's charter, private, all those different things. But for me, it's as a parent, that those things don't matter. What matters to me is safety and making sure that our kids are safe and that they feel safe walking to school, going to school, and coming home. And so one of my main things that I'm going to work towards is establishing a school safety committee and inviting in all those different parties and inviting in, the police and fire folks to talk and really establish, how do we work collaboratively to address this issue. It's not just a singular school issue. It's a community. We're all a community. We need to bring all those stakeholders in together to make sure that we're talking about those things. And, I think there's a few different aspects of that we can work towards. I think one of them is going to be the standardized police response, making sure that no matter what school our police or fire go to, that, the school is doing exactly what we plan for them to do, and the police and fire are doing exactly what we plan for them to do. And of course, contingencies or some, things happen that can change that. But ultimately, if we can get everybody on the same page, I think that's going to be a huge thing. And I think if we look at it holistically, get the stakeholders together, I think if we can come together as a city, we can also go after some, grants, state and federal grants. So they're out there. But I think if we have a united front working with everybody, we can really go after those dollars to start bringing in some of that money and reducing the cost for schools, reducing this cost for the city, and just really making it a place where the entire city is safe and all those kids are safe as well. I think those are certainly different things that we need to focus on. So those are my primary platforms for public safety. And we can get into some other things as well. I know on the slide we talk about growth and response times. As we continue to grow, making sure that those response times are at the there's a valley benchmark where it ranks the different cities as far as response times and those different things. So for me as mayor, it's just making sure that we are meeting those response time standards, especially as we grow out north and west and along Sun Valley Parkway. Those are some of our growth areas that we've identified in the city, and making sure that we, are putting fire stations strategically in those locations to make sure that we're meeting those different standards. So I think, for public safety for tonight, those are the main things that I want to talk about. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And then, so, one of the reasons why I switched this topic tonight, we were going to talk about, I think it was
Kevin, I don't know. Do you want to take questions on, do you want to break this up a little bit and take some questions on public safety first, and then
yeah, absolutely.
Topics.
The format, so
Yeah.
that'd be good. Do we have specific public questions?
Let me look at the ones that we have so far. Yeah, well, okay. So
And if somebody wants to come off mute and ask a specific question, that we can address that.
Yeah, Greg, I mean, you can speak up personally, but I could also read off the questions you put here in advance. It's up to you. If you want, I'll just read off what you'd asked here. We can speak to it. Greg had asked, please let us know your stance on addressing crime and surprise. Will it be the same old stuff? or will you partner with surprise police and make a difference? Will you establish relationships with federal and state law enforcement agencies? So,
Yeah, that's a good
question.
question, Greg. I appreciate you throwing that out there. So, my current role, I started at the Dysart School District as a safety coordinator back in October, and one of the things that was important to me is start to work collaboratively with the police and fire from El Mirage, from Surprise, and really from the county, because those are all the jurisdictions that respond to the Dysart schools. And so for me, anything that we do, it has to be collaborative, and we have to address some of those issues. And those are some of the things that I'd mentioned before, is some of those different regional crime task force that we're talking about, especially with the homeless. That's definitely a regional thing, and that's a whole other topic that I can get into. But if we want to dive into it, I could. But yeah, I think addressing those things and working, I think it's mostly working regionally, looking at some of our crime data. I know the police have a crime software where they can kind of do a tailor-made police, where they can see different things that are happening in the city and where they're happening, and really make sure that the police are in those areas that we can be in, and make sure that we're addressing them more appropriately in a timely manner. But I think another huge thing for the police is to talk to residents. I mean, there was, I live in Greer Ranch, and when I first moved in here in um, 2015, I moved to a new house in Greer Ranch in 2015. There was, it was nice, and nice new home, and across the street there was a drug dealer, and so I kept calling the police, and kept getting them involved, and it became kind of a frustration, really, because we call them, and then they come out maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes later, and whatever activity was going on was still there. But I think having that in the back of my mind, and knowing that there's residents out there frustrated with maybe it's a drug house, maybe it's any really issue, is to look at that data and really dive into that data deep, and make sure that we're doing the things that we need to do to address those things immediately, and not just pass it off as, oh well, they're homeowners, it's a civil issue. I think we really need to get ahead of those things, look at the data, work with our residents, understand what's going on in the community, and really do that community policing work. I think another aspect of policing that we need to get into to help prevent crime is really, it's kind of preventative. You talk about an incident happening, and really, I think for me, policing starts with everything left to the incident. And in the Army, or in the police world, they call it left of the bang. But that left of the bang is really where that preventative stuff comes in, where we work collaborative, where we understand where some of the issues are at, and we really work together to address those issues, and go after them, as opposed to being reactive of anything after the incident. I think that's really where police get behind the 8 ball, and where residents become frustrated, and the community becomes frustrated, in that, hey, we had this data, we knew what was going on, why didn't we do anything before it happened, and why are we more reactive? So for me, as a mayor, it's really working with our chiefs again, and working with residents to see how can we address these things before they become an issue. And so that's really my approach, regionally, working together, and being preventative. So Greg, I hope that answered your question.
All right. And as a reminder, you can come off mute and speak at any time. This is a very open forum. While we're doing it virtually, I want you to imagine ourselves sitting in a room together here with Kevin, and having
And
an
Q, I'm
open
trying not to say the word right.
conversation.
If I said the word right, you got to let me know.
Uh,
I'm from our last
okay.
having
Um,
fun.
yeah, no,
Kevin,
it's
I
good.
actually have a question for you, if you
Go
don't
ahead,
mind.
Yes.
Tammy. Yeah.
You mentioned homelessness and said that you'd be happy to share some thoughts there. It
Hmm.
feels like homelessness seems to be a rising problem in the city. I'm
It is.
wondering what you think we can do, what other cities have been doing, either here in the West Valley or across the nation. Like what is an effective strategy proving to be, to not only uh, quell the problems that come with homelessness, but also provide the support so that people can move
Hmm.
from homelessness into more stable community?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so for me, it's again working regionally, but I mean, the homeless issue, it's really heartbreaking. I mean, we have a lot going on. I mean, we have homeless here in the city, and for me, there's a couple of ways to approach it. One is preventative. We can prevent folks from becoming homeless, and I think doing that, we'd have to work through some jobs programs, maybe some short-term assistance, working with our community partners, faith-based organizations, nonprofits, to really find some of those areas where, if it's a rent issue, if it's a utility issue, any of those things, or even a job issue, trying to help people get prevent them from even becoming homeless. Because I think if we can prevent it, if we can have people come to the city and say, hey, look, we're having this issue, and we work with our human services and community vitality department to address some of those issues, I think we're going to be a lot more ahead of the game. But unfortunately, we don't get to all those folks. And there are folks, people that become homeless. And that's really where I think we have to work regionally. And so for me, it's not just a surprise issue. We have to get on the same sheet of music with all the different municipalities. That way, if there's somebody that's homeless in Surprise, and we address the issue, but then they go to Peoria or they go to El Mirage and they bring up the same issues, that's really just kind of playing whack-a-mole, if you will. But if we can coordinate our efforts and really, I think one thing we have to do is address those social woes. And that's, I think there's a lot of reasons why people become homeless. I think one is the economy, job market. It's really difficult to, for some folks to find work, and then the work they have doesn't pay enough to, to pay rent and those types of things. So I think addressing that is one thing, but, drugs and mental health are another huge issue when it comes to homelessness. And so I think if we can work again with our community partners to address those things and get them to accept help, and it's going to take some time. I think it's going to be proactive policing. It's going to get out there with our community partners and talking to them. And I think in any circumstances, as soon as you can build that rapport with somebody, and I know with homeless, it's going to take, I've heard, anywhere up to like 70 contacts for them to even want to accept the help. So we continue to be persistent, go out there and say, hey, what are your issues? How can we help you? And eventually they'll come around and, and provide those resources to help give them a hand up. Maybe it's a short-term, housing, maybe it's, jobs, maybe it's even just providing them a shower and a meal for the night. And that's working, again, with some of our community partners, faith-based nonprofits. But even still, if they still refuse, I think we have to start to work towards cleaning up some of those camps. And there's a lot of crime within some of those homeless camps. And in that aspect, that's where we really have to dig deep and work with our regional partners to say, hey, help get them IDs. A lot of folks don't have ID cards. So if we can get them IDs and work with, our community partners and share that data between municipalities and say, hey, we ran across this, person, and we offered this help for them, and they still couldn't get it. Because either way, whether they commit a crime and they get, taken to jail, they're still going to get the help. The Phoenix Rescue Mission is going to contact them whether they're out on the streets or they're in jail. And I think if we can get ahead of it and address those issues with, that. And I think also maybe some diversion. I think the answer can't always be just to throw them in jail and forget about them. I think there's some diversion that we can do. There's a CASA program, which is, the special assignment for advocates through the court system, that we can assign those CASAs to some of those homeless folks to help them through those issues, as opposed to just throwing them in jail and forgetting about them. So, like I said, it's for me, it's about being preventative and working through some of those to help keep people from becoming homeless. And then once they do, really being proactive and reaching out, and making sure we have that contact, and making sure that we work regionally to say, hey, this is the stuff we try to provide. They go to another city like, hey, Surprise, I already talked to you about this, or vice versa. I think, Tina, those are the ways that we really address and start to tackle the homeless issue.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like your discussion about preventing, because an ounce of prevention is, I always get the cliche wrong, but
Sure.
Certainly that's the more heartfelt and connecting way to address the issue. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Kevin.
Yes. Absolutely.
Unless anybody else has any live questions on it, all the ones in advance, none of them necessarily speak directly to safety, so we can bring some of those up later on.
Sure. All right. Let's keep moving forward in the presentation. I think government accountability and transparency. All right. Well, so there's a lot going on right now with the city. We're talking about raising the transaction privilege tax, or sales tax, from 2.2% to 2.8 or 2.9. And for every 0.1%, I think it's about $2 million that we'll get in revenue from that. And so, listening to the council and listening to some of their strategies to do that, I think it's a way, definitely. They were talking about initially, the state, and let me just give you some backstory to why we're here, where we're at with the shortfall. And I know the city talks about having a lean budget. We're at a $2 billion, budget this year. which is, or I mean, a $1 million budget this year, which is a ton of money. But even so, the state reduced the flat tax, so that reduced some of the state's revenue, which impacted our state shared revenue. And so they added another city to the state shared revenue pool, which is basically all this money comes in through different taxes. The state pools it together and then divvy it up to the different cities based on population. And so that money went down. I think that was about six or $7 million. And then the rental tax, which is going to impact us next year, is going away. So we can't get any revenue or tax revenue from rental tax, which is another about $6 or $7 million in total. I think we're probably somewhere right around $16 million with our shortfall for next year. And so when the city council came together, they talked about how to do that. And I think during the council budget retreat, they talked about reducing our property tax 50%. And the property tax really only accounts for a small portion of our general fund. I think it was maybe around $11 million in that general fund that it provides. But and I appreciate the council's approach on that, because they wanted to, hey, if we're given rentals relief on their housing, why can't we do the same for homeowners? And so I can appreciate that approach. I really do. But then, when they went to those retreats, they didn't have the exact numbers that they had when they did their last meeting. I think it was in April when they came back with that $16 million amount where we're going to be short. And so that conversation went from, raising the sales tax a little bit and reducing the property tax by 50% to maybe doing a 1/4% property, and then raising the sales tax up just a little bit more. But, I think for me, it's really about, I talked about having a $1 billion budget. And if we can cut 2% out of $1 billion, that's going to be $20 million, which would more than cover our shortfall for the year. And I know it's a short, from having that information to making decisions, but I think that the answer can't always be to raise taxes. We have to look at ways to cut internally first. There's a lot going on in the city. I know road preservation is one that we can kind of cut back short term. I know transportation is another one that they talked about. And there's a lot of money going out. I mean, if we look at the different ways that we provide transportation to residents, we have the We Ride, we have the ride share, and we have the paratransit. And each one of those, the resident either pays no cost or $3-4, and the city's paying upwards to $30 to $60 a trip. So if you calculate that out, I mean, I think we had 2,900 We Ride trips last month in just 1 month. So if you do that math, that adds up over a year. So I think we can kind of get creative with our transportation approach. Maybe we don't need all three. Maybe we only focus on a couple. I think that's another way to cut some of the spending, and then really just look at the different departments. I think there's 20 plus departments within the city, and they all have their own budgets and they all have their own things. But having been in government, from 2003 to I guess I still am with the district. There's always room to cut, and I know it's one of those things where government thinks a lot of times, hey, if you don't use your allotted budget, you're going to lose it. But I think in the city, we can be a little bit more deliberate with our planning, a little more deliberate with our budgeting, and say, hey, we're going to be a little bit short this year, and really start, have maybe it's a little bit bigger of an impact this year, but then we start backing that off a little bit as we continue to get revenue, as we continue to, refine our budget. I think those are certainly ways that we can address that shortfall, as opposed to just putting that on the backs of the taxpayers. The answer can't always be to raise taxes. We have to find ways, with inflation going on and, everything going on, it's hard for me to believe that we're going to try to pass that on to the residents. And, the argument can be made, well, it's a transaction privilege tax, it's a sales tax. You don't have to go buy things, right? But that's still going to be an impact. It's 50 cents on the dollar. But all between inflation and raising taxes, that all adds up, and that all adds up, to our family budgets. If my family's looking around at how much we have to spend and how much is coming in, I mean, we have to make cuts, and I think the government's no different, and they have to approach it that way.
Yeah, it's 60 cents to every $100 is what it ends up being.
60 cents. Okay.
So, yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So, that's for me, that's my approach in government. We have to be conservative. We have to be fiscally responsible. We're taking money from residents to provide for the better good of the city, which is needed, right? I mean, that's the whole point of government. But at the same time, we have to be responsible in how we spend it and make sure that we're spending it the right ways and having the biggest impact. We talked about balancing, services with the money that we, have to spend. But again, I think we can cut without cutting services in a way that will impact residents in a way that they'd see it. So that's my approach. I mean, there's other. So at the end of the day, I mean, I pledge not to raise taxes if I'm mayor. That's just period. We can't do it. We got to find ways. We got to find revenue sources. We had to be able to find a way to manage that. So, I think if we move past that, I think another thing that we can do is really make sure that we're transparent to our residents. We spend a lot of money on some of the different programs. Some of the, we had the concert in the park. We've had, the sparkling surprise, and we spend a lot of money on those, and they're great. They're great things for the community. That's what builds our community. That's what brings us together. But at the same time, we have to get feedback from the residents to say, how did this work for you? What are some of the good things? What are some of the bad things? How can we do it better? How can we manage that money better? And do we even spend money on that next year? And so for me, it's having that transparent review where we get the feedback from residents. And a lot of times, the feedback's only from folks that, didn't necessarily like whatever, program it was. But, I think we can encourage folks to participate, just like we have them participate in the retail survey, to participate in, some of the, the services survey, all those different things that we do. If we can encourage that and post it on our social, and maybe they don't do it at the event, maybe they do it, a day after, a week after. But I think we have that. We provide that opportunity for residents to provide their feedback, look at it, have the different directors that run, whether that's sports and tourism, whether that's Parks and Rec, or whichever department runs that program. Really do a holistic review of that event, and then present it to council and let residents come in and speak at it and speak to what they feel, and then really get take all that information to inform our decision for the next event and make sure that we're really spending our money wisely and having those programs and those events that residents want. So another aspect I think of a government accountability is meeting residents where they're at. There's so many different platforms, so many different ways the residents can get information. But for me as mayor, it's making sure that we stay ahead of those trends and making sure that we meet them wherever they're at, whatever social media they're on, and making sure that the information, whether that's, like this tax increase vote is a good example. Does every resident know that that's happening right now? Are we putting that information out on social? Are we putting it out on our website, email, whatever it is, making sure that we're transparent in the sense of we're giving them the information that they need. And then the last thing for me for transparency is just investing in the web services, investing in the technology that the city uses. There's a lot of times where, especially running for mayor or as a resident prior to that, or I'm planning and zoning, you're combing through the website, trying to find information. And it's like I'm back in, my master's degree trying to write a research paper. It can't be like that. The information needs to be immediate. It needs to be at the fingertips, and make it really quite simple for residents to know, what it is that we're doing in the city. If there's a development, we see those big white signs that, that tell us, hey, this is what's going on, but you're trying to read it as you're driving by. And, if there's a spot on the website where there's an interactive map where they can click on it, it has what the project is, all the pertinent documents that go along to it, and it gives them an opportunity to review it. It tells them when things are going to planning and zoning, when things are going to city council, and it gives them an opportunity to come speak to those agenda items at that particular time. So all that stuff wrapped in together to me is government accountability. And really, I'm going to add one more thing since I've been running for mayor, is just making sure that we're approaching it with integrity, making sure that we're governing with integrity and doing the right things. It's important. It's the way that I did it in the Army, making sure that we're spending money correctly, making sure that we're representing the organization. In the Army, it was, for me, representing the Army or the National Guard, but as mayor, it's representing that city and making sure that no matter what we do, it passes that headline test at the end of the day. So that's my agenda for government accountability and transparency.
Mhm.
Do we have any questions specific to that?
I'll take a look, but I'm going to ask one just because it's crossed my mind while you were talking a little bit.
Yeah.
One thought that came to mind is, is when you talked about focusing on the right programs and priorities, I don't know if, how regularly we look at those things, and if it's just, a budgeting exercise that comes once a year, or it comes, as it shows up on the calendar. But I just know that having been on the HOA for a number of years, on the board, and getting, we make a point of reviewing the financials every meeting, which is monthly for us. And it's part of the agenda, right? To look at it each time. I don't know if I know there's a lot to get done. There's a lot on agendas. There's a lot of things like that. But I don't know if there's a way to make that happen more. I was treasurer for a while too, and so I had a vested interest in us not raising our our dues, for example, which is like raising taxes, right, for the city. But I and so you know we kept very strict to that and looked for ways to manage our budget, and we watched the expenses as we went month to month, try to see how's it going, where can we cut, and so just in that framework, what do you think could be done to have your eye on that a little more than maybe the agendas allow today?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. You know, I think I think they do it internally. In
Hmm.
fact, they look at it internally, what their budgets are, what they projected, and then they revisit, where they're at and how to reallocate some of those funds. But again, if we're talking about, government transparency and web services, I don't see why we couldn't have a dashboard for each department and say, hey, this is our budget. This is, what we allocated for each different line item, and this is how much we spent towards it. And this is, where we're projected to spend, or, maybe we're not going to spend that much money. We can reallocate it maybe to a budget shortfall. I think certainly something that we can look towards doing. But again, it's going to take some investment in our web services to be able to do that. But
Sure.
as transparent as we can be, as opposed to looking at you can go into finance and you can go into the different reports and look at the different budgets. But I think if we can make that more of an interactive and more transparent thing as just kind of a dashboard as to where how healthy our budget is, I think that's important to do. And I think I know that's something that we can work towards.
All right. Any open mic questions right now before I go to the list of questions we have here in the that were submitted ahead of time?
And just to let everybody know, I have not read these. Quintus gets
Yep.
these questions, and I guess
That's
maybe I
true.
should look at them at the time. But there's going to be uh,
Hey, hey, it's a
questions.
busy next
It
60 days or
is.
so right now. We know that. So
It is. Yeah, I was on the phone up to about 15 minutes prior to this thing. So
yeah,
just running a campaign. We're doing it though. We're
yeah,
doing it.
yeah. So I have a question here from Christy Allen. She registered ahead of time, maybe didn't get a chance to join, or maybe she's watching on YouTube. But she asked this question, needs for small businesses. And I know, and this is a good thing. I know for next Monday, Monday the 10th,
Hmm.
we have lined up to talk more to small businesses here. But I thought
Yes.
I'd bring up her question, as it relates to a little bit of our government accountability and fiscal responsibility. She was I had a question here. I'd like to know, are there any specific businesses, industries that will be of interest? Will the businesses of interest target city needs or community needs? So I think she's trying to say that in here with this question, the need for more small businesses to get involved in what's going on in
Hmm.
Surprise. And are there specific industries we're looking to help or maybe coach certain industries and businesses of interest? I think that's where she's
Yeah.
leaning at with her question. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the way that I kind of took it. Small business is the heartbeat of our city. We have big box, we have, Costco, all those things. But for me, it's about that small business and supporting that small business community. So we're talking industry specific. I know with City Center developing with, different neighborhoods going in with some of that commercial space and some of those retail spaces, we need to make sure that we support them. And, whether that's, restaurants, whether that's local mom and pop stores that provide different things, I think that's important that we have the room for them and give them the opportunity to do that. If we're talking about a specific industry that can come in, for me, I think it's building public-private partnerships to bring in some more youth activities. I know our Parks and Rec department is maxed out as far as programming and what is available with the space that we have. And if we can, I'm a volleyball dad. I've been doing it for a few years now, and when we have to get up on a Saturday and Sunday morning back to back to drive all the way out to East Mesa to I keep forgetting the name of it. I think it's the Arizona Athletic Grounds now. It's been through a couple different names, but if we can bring some of those industries here, I think it'd be a huge thing, and they'd be programmed right away. I know if there was an indoor sports complex with basketball and volleyball, that would be programmed immediately. If there's batting cages, those would be sold out in a heartbeat. Some other thing, football fields, baseball fields, all those things. So for me, if there's an industry that we need that we would be welcome to Surprise, it would be that youth sports industry, because we have a ton of kids, and the city's maxed out on their programming. And if we can bring some additional things in to help boost the economy and bring in some of those other things for kids to do, and not just sports, but any activity truly for them to do, it's, I think Prosado went a good way. I mean, I drop my daughter off there pretty regularly, and like, where are you going to go? She's like, I don't know. I'm just going to walk around. And so, and she's 14, which is good. My son who's 23 grew up here. He didn't have much to go do. And, when he was a kid. So I think some of those things go, a little ways, but I think we can continue to focus on some of those activities for kids. That's going to really go a long way. And if we can find an indoor pickleball court, it would be magnificent. I know there's a Kohl's right on Reams and Cactus that would be a prime spot. I don't know. I've heard it's going to be a roller skating rink. I've heard it's going to be a church. I'm not exactly sure, but as mayor, if we can find an indoor pickleball, that would make a lot of people happy. So I'm excited to try to champion that for sure, because it's loud. If we put it next to a neighborhood, all we're going to get complaints is about the pickleball noise. So we can do indoor. It's air conditioned. The noise is down, and it would be something that everybody can do. So I know it's a growing industry, but yeah. So for me, those are the things that I want to try to bring into Surprise, specific to small businesses.
Yeah, some good thoughts there. Thanks. In terms of the government accountability piece that you were addressing here, and I don't see any other specific questions that came in for that. So if we have anything,
I saw a couple things pop up on the screen.
So what popped up on the screen was a comment on the roller derby, I think, or roller skating and having a roller derby team here, I think, came from Julie. So yeah.
I thought there was one more. I thought I didn't read.
Is there another one
completely? I think so.
I missed it. Let me look back.
It was about raising taxes, and if we haven't raised them in so long, do you see it on there?
I don't know. Did it go private to you? It may have, because I don't see it. Probably.
Let me look real quick. Chat. If we haven't not raised taxes in years, why would we not want to even talk about? So if we have not had a raise in taxes in years, why would we want to even talk about taking away these great community events, the concerts in the park, Bases and Brews? If we're not gonna, it's a great time for neighbors to get out and have to get neighbor in the city, because I've been here since 2006. I can't remember since we raised taxes. We need activities, not cuts. No, I certainly agree. I certainly agree that we need to continue to have those services for the city and continue to have those incredible events. But at the same time, I don't think it's all about raising taxes. I think with $1 billion budget, $1 billion goes a very long ways, And Tara, I appreciate you asking that question. But I think if we can look at the program that we do and continue to look at our budget, I think we can provide both. We can meet that shortfall while also providing some of those activities and continue to do it.
Yeah. Does that help answer the questions there? If anybody wants to come up to me and get some clarification or speak up, you're welcome to. Okay. No, thanks for asking that.
Yeah, that was a good question.
Yeah,
relevant, I think, for the conversation for sure.
Definitely. All right. I can go into another question that well, Tina, I don't know if you wanted this to be held off for or did she? Yeah, she's still here. If for when we address the water topic. I know you had some questions about the water portfolio. That's up to you if you want.
Yeah, we can hold off until that water meeting. That's fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know there was a slight swap in topics there. So, okay.
It was.
Yeah. All right, then. Candace asked a question ahead of time. I think relevant to her community in particular. She was just curious: is there anything that can be done to overturn the Dominion project? And I think that's referring to the one at Cotton Lane and Waddell.
Cotton and Waddell, yeah.
And that was recently went through, some legal court actions, a referendum and other things, but is now, being allowed to proceed. So I don't know.
Yeah,
your thoughts there.
It is. No, I don't think there's much we can do at this point legally. I know they're going to start building out some of the commercial. When I was on P&Z, that was one of the stipulations that we had. They had to build commercial concurrently, but I think they're already starting that ahead of time. But yeah, that project is going to be a reality probably next year or two, unfortunately. But again, that's,
So,
as mayor, that's important that we get ahead of those things now.
yeah,
When
I
we
guess that
talk
would be
about
my,
where,
oh, sorry,
go
Kevin.
ahead.
There's a little bit of delay. I apologize for interrupting you. So I guess that would be my follow-up question would be, what's your position on the multifamily, right? Some of, like when this Dominion project came up a couple of years ago, it was kind of cutting edge, right?
Mhm.
There weren't a lot of these types of options for people, right? But now the city is flourishing with apartments and multifamily and rentals. So what's your perspective on just kind of the volume we have today and how much you see that growing?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a good question. And there's 170,000 entitlements, which is an agreement between a landowner and a
Kevin, do you want
municipality.
to
They're
do you
gonna,
want to pause a minute and double check your microphone and its connection? Because I'm getting a lot of buzzy feedback, and as soon as you talk,
you talking about me?
yeah,
Is that any better?
it's still a bit of a buzz. I don't know if it's sitting on top of something.
Let me unplug my one.
Yeah,
Can you guys
sorry for
hear
the
me?
delay there. Yeah,
Is that any better?
yeah, it is. Yeah,
Okay. I had to go to the computer. Um,
yeah,
mic.
just
Okay.
speak a little louder, and but it'll work. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the question, just to reframe it or to get back to it, is what's my stance on those types of housing projects? So, you know, there is a need for housing. We're short housing significantly across the entire uh, you know metro area, and so I'm not going to say that we shouldn't have those types of housing options in the city. My son, he's deployed right now. He's 23. He's going to come back from his deployment in December, and he's going to try to find a place to live. And a lot of those places are very, very expensive. Or it's expensive to move out. And so I think we need to have those options, but at the same time, we need to work with developers and make sure that they're in the right location. It's not just about, the city has matured significantly in the last probably 5 years, 8 years. And so we're not in a position where we just continue to say, hey, come in and build. I mean, they're going to build, it's going to happen. But I think as mayor, my position is that, we work with developers ahead of time and create that dialogue between the developers, the city, and the residents, and make sure everybody's on the same page, make sure that there's a consensus to say, hey, this is what we want to build. Does that fit with the identity of the city? And does it fit, where you want to build it? Does that fit where it needs to go? And really help narrow down that specific, those specific questions and say, hey, let's build this you know development in this particular area. And I mean, where is that specifically? I can't say off the top of my head with as far as development. So what's on the table. There's a lot of those things happen um, when you're on council or when you're on P&Z and have those conversations beforehand. But again, for me, it's about getting ahead of it and working with developers and just being collaborative. They're going to build one development now, and a year from now they could be another one. So we can't be you know completely non-growth, but I think what we can be is collaborative and making sure that we work with developers and residents to make sure that we meet. There's going to be some consensus building and make sure everybody's on the same page going forward, as opposed to saying, developer coming in, hey, we're building this, whether you like it or not. I think that's the wrong answer for developers, and that's the wrong answer for the city. So, from my time on P&Z, that's going to be my stance, working with developers and residents to make sure that it's in the right place.
Okay. All right. I think, yeah, I was just trying to look at a comment that came in. It came in as a private one, but
All right. Well, while you're
Dominion,
looking for that,
well,
let's keep on the
yeah,
slides. So now
sure.
there's a couple things going on with the election. If we can click the slide one more time, the biggest thing that we're doing right now is just the grassroots campaign efforts. We're really in the home stretch, and we need everybody's support that we can get. We're going to start knocking doors. We're going to start making phone calls. We've been doing it, but we're going to really stress it even more the next 57 days until we get to July 30th. So if you haven't signed up to support, we really need you to do that. I mean, every single conversation that you have, every single sign that you can help put in a yard, every single time that you can interact with our social and really help spread that word is going to be key to our success, to making sure that we win this mayor seat. It's going to be vitally important. So that's the grassroots stuff. So I hope that everybody continues to pitch in. So if you scan these QR codes, that's the one way to stay connected, to join our list, to know events that are coming up. Or I mean, really, I think the next thing that we can do is to really start narrowing down some of the neighborhoods. So if you live in a specific neighborhood, you can go help knock doors or make phone calls in your neighborhood. I think that's going to have the biggest impact. So if you can sign up, tell us what district you live in, what neighborhood you live in, and then we can start giving you a list of people to go talk to that are going to be engaged in voting. And those are going to be the people that we really need to hit the next 57 days. And then of course we need campaign contributions. This is going to be a key to the race. I was working with the consultants earlier today on a budget, and we have money, but not enough to make sure that we really cement this win. And so any contribution, whether that's $25 is going to be huge, all the way up to 500. I mean, whatever you can afford with your budget, but any little bit that you can provide to support this campaign, it would be extremely welcomed. And I would be extremely grateful for any contribution that you can have, because every dollar is going to count in this election, and we really need to start focusing on knocking doors and getting folks to donate. So there was a question about bumper stickers. They're magnets, and so they don't stick as well as we had hoped, and cars aren't as metal as we thought that they were, at least in the front and the back. So for me, I've been going to different businesses. I went to a coffee shop. They had a refrigerator. I was like, hey, I'm running for mayor. Can you help us out? Can you put this on here? And just to have that extra little visual when people go to their local shops is going to be key. So if you can take some of those, I put one in my car and it fell off nearly immediately. I know Quintus talked about maybe gluing it on there. I wouldn't ask me.
Not gluing. You can avoid glue, but two-sided tape can run you through election time, and you can still use the Goo Gone to take it off after, right? So
good point.
Whatever it takes to get people to see it, that's the main thing. Yeah.
And Q, you said how many each bumper or each magnet garners what, 20 votes, you said?
That's a marketing statistic I got out of Scottsdale. I think here it's more like 30, but now I'm just
I love it. So, 30 votes. And how many did you get? 500?
We got 500 of them. Yeah.
500. So you can do the math.
But no, I think a lot of it ties to the fact that now you're associating it with people, plus you see it behind, when you're in traffic behind someone. So if you do put it on, drive nicely. That'll help.
Sure.
Yeah.
I already get enough emails about campaign signs being in people's way. I don't need to, hey, your supporter cut me off.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the support, though. It's tremendous. It's been incredible experience, and I feel blessed to be here and in this seat and doing this. So, but it wouldn't have happened without your guys' support. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right. So the key dates. So voter registration is July 1st. If you know anybody, I know that we got a lot of high school kids that just graduated. Anybody that moved to Surprise recently, get them to register. I've run across a few people on the campaign trail that I'm like, hey, I'm running for mayor. Like, well, we just moved here. Awesome. Go register to vote here in Surprise. It's going to be key to make sure we get that message out. And then July 30th, that's the key date. That's the election day. So I know the mail-in ballots go out on July 3rd. So we're really going to push, between now and July 3rd. And I mean, we're going to continue to push the entire time. But once those mail-in ballots go out, it's going to be a key. Those are going to be the first ones I think that hit on election night, if I'm not mistaken. And so when you mail them back in, so we need to make sure that we hit those dates and make sure that we get out and vote on July 30th.
Yeah, but you call it good news or bad news, but some of the statistics, and we'll try looking through those, is we don't get as much turnout as we should voting. No. So even if the mail-out ballots go, we still need to work hard right up to election day to help people get out and vote, because we should be getting 80 to 90%, but we certainly don't. Yeah.
And if you know any independent voters, they can either request a Democrat or Republican ballot or a city-only ballot. So we need to make sure that we communicate that out as well. They're going to have to choose which ballot that they want to get mailed to them, or that they're going to use on election day as well. So,
yeah.
All right. What's the next slide?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Q&A. So, all right. So we'll open it up to, I guess, to any general questions and answers. Do we get any more? Does anybody want to come off mute and ask a specific question that, whether that's public safety, government, transparency, accountability, any of those things, or just anything that you have questions about at all about the election or the campaign, any of those things?
Yeah, I just got another question come through. It was just, it says people keep saying
there's a couple that came through on YouTube as well.
Oh, are there? Okay. I'll start with this one. I think we spoke to you a little bit, but if you want to give a quick summary again on it, but people keep saying that crime is way up in Surprise as you're watching the news, and what's the
Mhm.
plan? If you just want to summarize again some of your thoughts there with the crime, any crime going up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some really tragic events the last few weeks in Surprise, and my heartfelt thanks goes out to our public safety men and women. I mean, what they do is incredible. For them to run into that house and save that baby is just incredible. It takes a special person to run into danger, and that's something that we have to continue to appreciate and continue to support those folks with. I mean, as regards to crime and public safety and all that stuff on the rise, I think statistically, Surprise is down a little bit on crimes. I know there's been some stuff in the news that doesn't make it appear that way, but statistically we are down in crime. But for me, it's about community policing, and it's about working with our residents, working with community partners to make sure that we are getting ahead of the different things that could potentially be happening in the city, and just being as preventative as we can, being making sure we're getting ahead of it as opposed to being reactionary. I think that's really the key to a community. There's so many things that go on in our community, and if we can get ahead of things and be preventative and build coalitions and build community partners, that's going to be the key to tackling anything, especially with public safety.
So
Oh,
if I
go ahead.
can ask the two that are in the live chat from YouTube. The first one is from someone by the name of Michelle, and she asks, what are your thoughts on developers absorbing some of the costs for providing fire, school, and additional police services prior to getting approval to develop the additional housing? And then there's one more after that.
Yeah, let's tackle that one first. So yeah, developers need to pay their fair share of what needs to happen, but we can't. It's a tough balance. I mean, we're going to grow, and we have to have that balance. But no, I think developers, and that's through development and impact fees, right? We get the money, and we may not need a police station or a fire station immediately, but we're going to need those roads immediately. So I think if we can have those developers build out some of those roads and that infrastructure to the development, that's going to go a long ways with taking some of that burden off to the city. But then through developmental impact fees, that's where we can program the fire stations, the parks, all those different things. As the community builds out and people move in, we don't need that fire station immediately. We're going to need it down the road a little bit. So I think we have those developmental impact fees to help provide for some of those things, but at the same time, there's some upfront costs that the developer can take on, which are developing the roads and making sure the infrastructure is connected. And I to that point, there's a lot of leapfrog developments, and that's where we have one development here, and then maybe a few miles down the road there's another development, and we have to figure out a way, and it burdens the city to try to get that infrastructure from point A to point B. If we can work with developers and work out that timing where we're building contiguously, which means one after another, and trying to minimize that impact and that cost to the city is going to go a long ways as well. So yes, developers need to pay their fair share for developmental impact fees to help make sure that we have that programming for future things, but they also need to pay for their infrastructure ahead of time with the roads and the water and all those different things. And so that's my stance on those particular topics.
And then the second question is from somebody by the name of George Bradbury. George asks, given that the state is moving to pass laws that allow guest houses and duplexes and triplexes in a single family zoned area, and cities won't be able to stop them, how can we manage that, or how can that be managed?
Yeah, that's two things that they just passed. They just passed two laws. One is to allow for those duplexes and triplexes within a certain radius of the city center. So any city that's over, I think it's 50,000 residents, you can't say no to it. And then the other thing is allowing those accessory dwelling units, which is if you have property and you can build an additional housing unit on your property, then they can do that. And so for me, it's about, again, almost the same as those, some of the housing projects, that we are looking at. It's about working with developers to say, hey, where are you going to put this? Does it make sense for the city? And not just let them build, wherever they want, however they want. It's, if it's a state law that we can't stop it, it's frustrating for sure. But we have to get ahead of it and work with some of those folks, with the developers, to make sure that they're going in the right place, especially for those duplexes, triplexes type things. With the casitas, I think there's some additional things that we can put in place as part of making sure that those are, you know, those residents are for people that are going to live in the city, not just a short-term rental. That's a big concern for me, that if these people build casitas or accessory dwelling units, that they're going to rent them out on a short-term rental, you know, like a what's it called, the Airbnb type thing, and then we're having these parties and these different things, but making sure that we don't have that. But at the same time too, I hope if somebody had the property to build something like that, they would have a little more respect for the city and not do those types of things. But I think we can work through some of those different things and really making sure that whatever they're building in those ADUs, make sure that it fits with the identity of the particular community that they're building in. And so I know for me as mayor, it's about, you know, working with our state legislature to make sure that, you know, some of those housing things that they're trying to impose on us, you know, they hear from the cities, and making sure that we're pushing back on a lot of those. I think, you know, government is about representation, and for, you know, a next higher level of government to dictate what, you know, the lower level of government does, you know, to some extent we need that, you know, but at the same time we also need to, you know, stand up for our city and stand up for our own identity, and making sure that we're dictating what's going on in the city, not just, you know, saying, hey, you know, state, you're going to pass a law and it's going to be, you know, pushed onto us. We got to push back on a lot of those things. And so as mayor, I'm going to advocate for the city at every opportunity that I can to make sure that, you know, we're developing the city that we want to develop. And that's why we have these, you know, long-term plans, you know, the 2040 plan that we're going to be voting on as well during this election. That's why we develop those things. So that's our identity of our city. We're identifying where, you know, the growth areas are, what, you know, those design centers are going to be. So for me, it's about advocating for the city at any opportunity to make sure that we are maintaining our sovereignty, to make sure that we develop the way that we want to develop. Thanks for the question, George.
Thanks. And we got one in the chat from Nate. Nate, I don't know if you want to ask it live or I can read it otherwise.
I know we have, we said it would be an hour. We're coming up on just about an hour. So let's make this the last question. Not that I want to, you know, quit having this thing, but we're going to continue to do these every Monday night. So if your question wasn't answered in this particular session, because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So we'll answer this.
This one is pertinent to tomorrow night. So Nate was asking.
No, I just want to make sure that we respect everybody's time.
For sure. Yeah, if anybody does need to drop away, there will be a recording. It's also being broadcast on Kevin's YouTube channel. You can watch later as well. So anyway, this question is, and I don't know if you necessarily know the answer. I don't have the answer in front of me. It says, how much more in revenue does the city estimate will be generated by sales tax increase versus the property tax decrease? So what's the plus minus on that? I don't know if I've seen any detail on that.
Projected. Yeah, so for every 0.1% of the sales tax, I believe it's about $2 million. I want to say 2.2 million increase in revenue. And then but the proportion of sales tax and property tax is not the same. We get a lot more money in our general fund from our property tax. I'm sorry, from the sales tax. The property tax is a lot less. I want to say maybe it was I don't want to misquote, but it wasn't a ton of money. And so the proportion that we're going to, you know, potentially decrease the property tax is not going to have that big of an impact on our city budget. And at the same time, too, when we reduce those property taxes, it takes a lot longer to keep those. And this is only the primary property tax, by the way, not the secondary property tax as it pertains to the bond that we just passed. But it takes a lot longer to get those to increase the property tax if we decrease it significantly. So I think, given the fact that it doesn't have that big of an impact, I think 0.25% or a quarter decrease, not a percent, but a quarter decrease of the overall property tax is good. But I don't want to go too low on that, because while it doesn't have a huge impact, it's still, you know, I don't want to be short-sighted and have to come back in a year or 2 years from now and have to revisit this. So, but again, I think through, you know, better budgeting and better accountability, we can absorb that, you know, shortfall, as opposed to increasing taxes and still providing some of the amazing things that we do in the city.
All right. Oh, the chat just filled up with a few comments. Oh, okay. The figure is
I just used my calculator to do some math.
Oh, okay. I see. So the
primarily
0.6% would represent about 12 million more in the budget. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I know the city's trying. I think they talked about cutting about $2 million back. So, I think we went from 16. They're trying to recover about 14 million. But again, I think there's other ways that we can do that. So, is there another slide, Rebecca?
No, it's just the end one,
Okay.
reminding everybody to vote wise.
Vote wise, surprise. We got to drive wise and we got to vote wise. But again, I appreciate, and I don't want to cut anybody off. We can say these questions and interject them into the other topics that we're going to have. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time, but I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. I know that you got a lot going on in your families and your life and all those things. So I truly appreciate you coming on, listening to, what I have to say about the city, my vision for the city. And there's really a lot of work to do in the city. I think I love surprise. And I know that we're the city staff and city councils working hard, and I know residents are working hard to make this, an amazing city, which it is. But again, I feel like with the right vision, we can really, it's not just about, the next 4 years. It's really setting the foundation for what Surprise is going to look like, when my kids are grown up and when their kids are grown up, hopefully here in Surprise. So again, I appreciate everybody coming on. I appreciate you spending time. The questions were great. I think it was some really good dialogue, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week. It's going to be a continued Monday Night Live until through the June. So again, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you all next Monday. Have a good night.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.